see the link in there.
Perfect.
I think we can go ahead and start now. Hello.
Wonderful. You can go ahead.
Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session. And this is Suma Parnam. I'll be the moderator for this session. You can always type your questions by clicking on Q&A tab or even in chat. And we will also dedicate time at the end for our Q&A sessions. And any other questions, I'm here to answer in the chat. Any technical difficulties, feel free to shoot a question there. Now, I would like to welcome our presenter today, Maggie Fisher. It's all yours, Maggie.
All right. Thank you, Suma. Good morning. This is Integrating Tech Skills. It's a workshop. It's good to see everybody here. Quickly, my name's Maggie Fisher. I work in Tyler County. I am the TSS and ATSS and webmaster. And I've been a library media specialist. I've taught English, journalism. I'm currently an Apple Learning Coach candidate. I'm an Apple teacher, and I have certification in some of the Microsoft areas. All right, so before we get started, here's some housekeeping items. So for right now, let's try out the chat. And if you look over to the far right, you have an event chat and a session chat. So let's use the session chat. And I would like you to put up there in the chat where you work. So what county you work in. Let's bring up the session chat. Hi, Sophie. I saw your presentation yesterday. Good morning, Crystal. And Barbara. Marshall and Nicholas. WVU. Wonderful. Well, it's good to see you guys. Thank you so much. All right, so now let's try out the polls. And if you go over here, it's still on the right under session, we go to polls. And Suma posted that for us. We're going to try that out. And have you ever attended a statewide tech conference? Is this your first event? All right, good. So we've got a lot of people who have been at one of these before. Very good. All right, so for collaboration, there are some stopping points, and they'll be very evident. Chat is fine, but I'm encouraging everybody to come off video and share some of the ideas that you have. I'll be asking you to brainstorm and write down some ideas today. So you might want to grab paper, a scrap sheet of paper, and a pencil. These notes are just for you. So let's look at our agenda. We're going to start with some inventory and goals. We'll move through some alphabet soup, and then we'll stop and share. We'll talk about assessment, collaborate a little bit about those assessment pieces. Then we'll talk about the planning, teaching, and reflecting parts of integrating tech. We'll have a poll question at the end, and then we'll open it up to final discussion and questions, and hopefully share some really good ideas before we leave the session today. All right, so let's start by focusing our brain power on this idea of student-centered learning. So take a moment and read the screen. So I hope you heard Dr. Kuros's keynote speech yesterday, because I felt like it was a perfect introduction to this session. This workshop goes hand in hand with some of those big ideas that he talked about yesterday, which was focusing on students. So some of the questions that I heard that he asked are, do you consider how all of your instructional elements fit together? Do you provide enough structure? And are your plans and processes simple and consistent? So what we're doing today is asking ourselves some of those questions as we work through the planning process, so that we can make sure that we check mark all those boxes. So like the Jelly Bean project that he talked about, collaboration is going to get us closer to some great strategies for student-centered learning than we can get there on our own. So I want you to walk away from this session with lots of ideas. So during brainstorm sessions, let your mind wander across everything you ever wanted to teach, everything that you might have taught in the past, or maybe you have coworkers or people who are teaching now that you might have ideas for them. Don't worry about walking out of here with a complete lesson plan. That's not a problem. All right, so let's start by taking inventory of the tech resource you have at your disposal. So I'm going to give you 30-second think time to brainstorm. It's not a whole lot of time, but it's enough that you should be able to get a few ideas. So think about the resources available to you. What do you currently use? What is available but you don't use? What do you use in your personal life? What's your comfort level with technology? And what are the county and school expectations for your use of technology? These are just some prompts, so you can start with these. Any ideas that you have, go ahead and jot them down. I'm going to set a timer. You have 30 seconds. All right. So let's keep this list to yourself for now. We'll come back to it in a few minutes. Next, I want you to inventory curriculum that you work with or that you teach. So what type of curriculum do you love, which is the yay and the heart? What do you wish that somebody else would teach for you? Because let's be honest, everybody has that. So what do you just not really love to teach? What are some of your time constraints or your schedule constraints? Think about your students. What are their strengths? What do they really need to work on and what do they need a lot of help with? But at the focus of all of that and the biggest part of this planning process are what are your learning goals? What kind of curriculum, benchmarks, what do you need to teach? That's at the heart of this. So take 30, brainstorm some curriculum inventory ideas. All right, you can take a quick break from brainstorming. We're going to talk alphabet soup and how this connects to what you just brainstormed. This graphic is from powerschool.com and it illustrates the SAMR model. And I think of this as a Bloom's taxonomy for tech integration. And it's just like all levels of Bloom's are important. All levels of the SAMR process are also important. They're built upon each other, but depending on what you're teaching, one of these levels might be better than another for that specific process. So at the bottom, you see substitution and augmentation, and those are the enhancement steps. So you have added added some great seasoning to your lesson, but it's still the same recipe that you have used for every family dinner since you started cooking them. So if you're working with these steps, you have to ask yourself, what do students have to gain? Does the technology increase student productivity or potential? So no problem using substitution or augmentation. Honestly, during COVID, substitution was one of the biggest ways that technology was used, at least in Tyler County. And I think from talking with some other teachers, that's where people are comfortable right now. So let's look at how you can move on to the upper levels and modification and redefinition and maybe try out those steps as well. So these transformation steps up here at the top. So you now have created this brand new dish using the traditional ingredients. You might have added a few more. That's modification and redefinition. So if you're working within these steps, you have to ask yourself though, is the technology significantly altering my learning goal? I think that this graphic is something, and there's a link in the chat to this whole presentation with all the links that I've included, so you have access to all of these printables and graphics. I think this is a really good graphic to have to print stick on your wall, put in your plan book, because I know that when I plan lessons, before I saw this, I used the Bloom's taxonomy a lot just to get those words from the taxonomy as a really good starting point for my lesson planning. SAMR can work the same way for integrating technology into your lesson plans. All right, so now here we are at the first collaboration point, and I'm really excited to hear what some of your guys' ideas are on integration, or your initial ideas on technology and curriculum. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds of think time before we start, and I want you to revisit those brainstorming notes that you've taken. And I want you to look for examples of each step of the SAMR process, or maybe you can come up with a new one. Maybe your brain's already working. Maybe you finished your coffee yet. I haven't, and your brain is working a little faster. So I want you to find an example of SM, SAM, and R in your brainstorms. And then when we get to collaboration time, I want you to think about what elements can you share? What questions do you have about this initial brainstorming step of planning? So go ahead and take 30 seconds of think time. All right, so I'm gonna bring back up so I can see the video. Now, just remember, if you all would like to get on video, and if you would like to share, you just click on the request audio and video. So right now, I would like everybody to have a chance to share so far. I was just reading. Did everybody, can you guys hear me, I'm assuming? Hopefully Sally got this checked. All right, very good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and share. So if anybody would have anything to share, go ahead and request your video and audio, and I'd like you to share some of your ideas about the SAMR process. You can also drop your ideas in the chat if you like. All right, we have a quiet bunch this morning. Drink some more coffee, and maybe in the next step, you guys will have some ideas to share. All right, Suma, I would like, I'm gonna do a second poll question.
I'm ready.
Very good. So in what SAMR step would you classify the majority of your tech ed use? So you've brainstormed some ideas related to the technology that's available to you. You've brainstormed some curriculum ideas. And I want you to think about, so far in your teaching or your coaching or your administrative experience, where do you see most of the tech ed use? What step does it classify in?
Can you get me the question again, Maggie, if it's a...
No problem. In what step would you classify the majority of your tech ed use? And then you can, the choices would be SAMR.
And anything else?
Nope, that's all. Can you make choices like one choice S, one choice A?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. There we go. So I'm going to stick this graphic back up on the screen so that you can see that. Where do you think most of the technology use has fallen so far? All right, and let's take a look at...
We have 60% of votes for A and 40% for M so far.
Very good. So what it looks like then, and what you guys are telling me, is that redefinition is somewhere that most people are not quite there yet. Augmentation seems to be a pretty comfortable spot for most people. And it's good to see that so many people are at the modification stage as well. Very good. All right, so we are moving on to think a little bit about assessment. So first idea about assessment to know is that when we talk about integration, technology integration with assessment, this can mean that you're assessing a tech project or that you're using technology to assess a project. And I put an example at the bottom. Teaching English, I was always looking for an easier way to grade and return responses to students. So if they write a paragraph and maybe they're typing it and emailing it to you, but instead of providing written feedback, if I record that audio and send it to them, it's a little faster for me. And that would be a way that I can use technology to assess a project. That's also considered technology integration. And usually with that assessment piece, there is interaction with the student, and there's a really cool ways that you can layer in some extra communication and collaboration with those students. So let's go back to brainstorming, and I want you to think about assessment pieces. What do you use now? What do your coworkers use? What's already out there that needs improvement? Maybe what intimidates you? Like what intimidates me is having to grade and respond to 100 student essays. That's a really tough job to do. So just remember, tech-based assessment can be paired with a tech-rich assignment or traditional assignments. So let's think about integrating technology with some kind of assessment piece. I'm going to give you 30 seconds of think time to write down some ideas. All right. So this graphic came from tech.ed.gov, and the link is here. So when you download, if you want to download the presentation today, the link is there, and there's some really great resources on that website. So this idea was that our traditional assessment pieces are not matching up with the next gen style of learning and teaching that's going on. But I also look at this just like Bloom's, just like the Sammer model. Sometimes traditional assessment's fine. But what I want you to do is to look at your brainstorm and think about the assessment pieces that you're using. Take a look at this next generation list. Are there any ways, or are there any examples of assessment that you're using now that are already next generation? Or do you have any tools at your fingertips that you can use to make any of your assessments a next generation assessment? And I'll give you a great example. In West Virginia, every school has access to Office 365. And I'm looking at the item types down on the bottom, that last row. And you can create, using forms, you can create a multiple choice document that gives students immediate feedback. It will mix up the choices. It puts them in different orders. It puts the questions in different orders. And that is also, that's enhanced. Also looking up at the pathways with fixed forms, also with branching, allows you to make adaptive quizzes and tests. So there are some ways that we can take what we already have at our fingertips and make them next gen. So take 30 seconds. I hope that some of you will have something to share this time about assessment pieces and technology. So take 30 minutes or 30 seconds and think through this assessment piece. All right. I was just going back to the chat, Sophie. I think your comment was perfect. Yeah, I do think that there are lots of teachers augmenting or higher, but unfortunately, I don't think those teachers are sharing quite as often as they should. I wish that they would share some of their ideas more often. I've seen some great options yesterday. There's some really great examples of that. And Robin, your idea too of, yes, Office. I am the person in our county who is trying really hard to get everybody on board with Office because it's free to us and it's really powerful. All right, so let's do a little bit of collaboration on assessment, or even going back to the initial, your list of technology available to you or your curriculum goals. Do you guys have any questions? Do you have any concerns? Or maybe you guys have some examples of things that your teachers or coworkers are doing that you'd like to share. You can drop those in the chat or share on video or audio. Absolutely, Sophie. Hi, Crystal.
Hello. We have Google in our county too, and I like to use exit tickets to, see where the kids are, and they're easy to make because they already have a template already set up. But I mean, you can make your own exit tickets, and it's just a Google form, and it makes an easy assessment to see what they learned, what they don't understand from the lesson, and what we need to go back and work on the next time we meet.
Good. So how do students ticket?
Usually we use Google Classroom. We have Google
so you
Classroom.
Can send it. You can
you can send it to Google Classroom to your class and have them answer, or you could just send them a link if you're not using Google Classroom, because forms work that way too.
Perfect. I've got a presentation later today on QR codes, and that's another way that you could get that information out. Mm-hmm. So it's worked well for you all?
Yes, real well.
And then do the students get immediate feedback?
Yeah, yes, they do. I mean, and they can put their stuff in there, and then we can send it back out to them too and see what's going on. Because I like with Google Classroom because they can make comments or not, depending on how you have it set up. But then you can you can figure out where your students are and then answer them right away. And you can also do those same way with Office 365 self-graded quizzes. We use a lot of self-graded quizzes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sophie, would you sharing a little bit more about VR tours with us and how that works? And I'm writing down some of these other ideas that you have put in the chat.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you, Sophie.
Okay, my video is not working for some reason today. Ms. Doyle, only 5 people can be in at the same time. That's what's going on in this one. So anyways, VR. I absolutely love using VR, especially in social studies and science classes. I've had amazing experience in middle school and high school with VR in science classes doing exploring the inside of a cell of multiple different cells, and then also exploring the solar system. We even did, in one of my social studies classes, we showed that complete eclipse that we had a few years back. Someone created a VR of it, and our students got to experience it and see the difference when the full eclipse wasn't there, and then when it was there. So that it was something that they would not have been able to experience otherwise. I've gone to the Mount of Everest. I've gone to the top of Mount Everest. I've gone to Egypt and explored the pyramids, and just some of my West Virginia history students have even created VRs in some West Virginia parks. So not only are they be able to create things with the VR, but they are able to explore places that they would not normally be able to explore and get that background knowledge to make it more real.
Very cool. I love that. And I think yesterday I attended a session where one of the professors from WVU was doing something similar with travel, and they were writing in a travel app that was published. So it's that authentic experience versus something like just reading it in a textbook.
Yes, Trips app. I was in that one too.
Yeah, it was really, really neat.
And it seemed to be really easy. It reminded me of like a Sway in Office 365, where you just sort of put the pictures and text in, and it sort of created it all by itself.
It did. Those are really both, and you can almost do like pair up what you're saying with the VR trips with a Sway and make their own travel guides too. You could even expand on that.
Oh, you could also use GIS to even map the story that you're reading about, if it has like real locations, whether if it's fictional or non-fiction. If you can add images and you Sway using GIS and map your story. There's storyboards, I think is what they're called, or story maps. Erica Close is the one you want to get in contact for that. But you can actually map the trip that someone takes in their book using the GIS and talk about what happened at each location. Or even in social studies doing any kind of historical thing.
I love that. It's very cool. Thank you so much, Sophie. I appreciate that. Leslie, I was really glad that you've got teachers using forms, and I'm glad that you guys are using QR codes, because I think those are super handy as well when you're sharing information. IXL data, Stephanie, I like IXL. We also use Kahoot, Nearpod. I used Nearpod yesterday for the first time. It was very good. Stephanie, your digital escape rooms, did you make them from scratch? Did you get one on like Teacher Pay Teachers? I've seen all those options. Well, yay for you. Was it successful? Very good. You should put together a little tutorial and share that out with everybody, because I think there are a lot of teachers, including myself, who love to see how to put together one of those escape rooms. Pear deck. All right. These are great ideas. I appreciate you guys all for collaborating and participating. All right, so let's move into these last steps. There's not any brainstorming that's going on right here. But when we're talking about the planning and teaching, and this is the part that sometimes it's the most time consuming, and it's something that I want you to think about going back to your college days. And I remember writing 2- and 3-page lesson plans, and it seemed ridiculous. But when I'm preparing to teach something new, and for those of you who are coaches, I know I saw a couple of instructional coaches in here, administrators, maybe just a coworker who people seek out for help, setting that timeline, scripting out your lessons, and using a template that might be 2 or 3 pages long, that's a fantastic way to gain a lot of confidence and to ensure a little bit of success. And as we get, I mean, I've taught now for 15 years, I've been in education, and some of this, I just feel like, oh, I can step in and do this and it works out. Well, yes, the teaching part might, but you are dealing with technology that never goes quite right. So there's always something that goes wrong. So starting small is so important. Only think of maybe only teaching to one class, or maybe only recruit a co-teacher, or maybe only teach with your inclusion class where there are 2 adults in that room. Always prepare backup plans and always roll with the punches. If you have a little humor with yourself, the kids or your adults you're teaching, whoever you're teaching, will pick up on that. We'll move on, we'll figure it out, and we'll go on. But that timeline, scripting it out at least the first time through, I think is one of the best things that you can do when integrating technology. You need to almost like write it out, exactly what you're going to say, what you will do, what the students will do. And that goes back to what Dr. Kuros said about the expectations being simple and structured. And if you provide all of that structure, sometimes kids are not as tech savvy as we think they are. And if we can tell them exactly where to click, exactly what to do that first time through, then you're going to be amazed at what everybody together can do once you teach it again, because there will be second and third times you teach this. So on this slide, I've links at the bottom, and if you go back to the link I put in the chat and you download this folder, you'll have access to these. These were 2 lesson plan templates that I found pretty useful. You might not need to answer every single question, but I felt like the prompts really helped you anticipate what you will need to consider for the lesson. And also both of those kept the learning goal and the curriculum at the heart of the lesson, which is always the most important part. And then the last step is reflecting, and you always need to revisit your learning goals, compare the timelines that you planned versus what actually happened, gather and review your data, which is extremely important. Look at your student feedback, any questions and concerns, but then plan for the new lesson and set some new goals. Don't skip the reflect part. Don't skip it, whether it means that you reflect after the first lesson or at the end of your day. Maybe you'll record audio instead of writing things down, but always reflect, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to get better. All right, so we're going to question. We are going to go to any final questions and discussion. Robin, thank you for, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. So before I open this up to everybody else, any discussion, I just want you to think back to the very beginning and going through this process. What we did today is we started by brainstorming. So maybe you weren't in a classroom, but maybe you're helping somebody else integrate technology. You need to start by making a list of what do we have, what is already used, and what do we have in the classroom already. When you take those and start working with those, and you work with your comfort level or the teacher's comfort level, then you're going to be able to expand more. It's that idea of scaffolding. It works for teachers and adults too. Then we moved on to assessment. So we thought about our curriculum goals. How are we assessing student learning? That could be at the end. It could be in the between. It doesn't matter. But how are we assessing? Then we planned it. Then we taught it, and then we reflected on it. So if you follow all of those steps, it's going to help you integrate whatever technology you want to use. This is really ideal for people who are intimidated, who are trying something new. So I'm going to open it up to you all. If you guys have anything to share, you can drop it in the chat. You can come off your video. All right, if you guys roll back up to the top of the chat, I've put a link up there, and I'll stay in here for a few more minutes as we wrap up a little bit early. There's a link that's a folder that has all of my documents for the 4 presentations that I have this week at the tech conference. Help yourself to those. There are a lot of links and printables in there that you can use. We're going to be finishing up a few minutes early, so I hope that you can use this time maybe to go explore some of the other parts of the conference before the next session. So if that is all, if you guys don't have any other questions, I really appreciate your participation. I hope you guys have a good afternoon or a good day.